Hello, everybody. This is Emily Booth, and it looks like we have everybody except for one participant. I do want to let you know that you are in mute mode, which is the way the webinars are done, because we don't have that many people this time, but next week we hope we will. So what we are going to need to do is, if you do have any questions or anything that you would like to bring up during the broadcast, you will need to type that in on the screen that's on the right-hand side, and then Marcus is here with me, and he will pull that up, and we will we'll address those questions. I think it's probably going to be less of an issue this week, and more so probably for next time. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and start with the broadcast. And thank all of you. I see Bob and Karen and Krista, and I think I saw Susan's name. Yes, that are all here. So thanks so much for helping us on doing this. And what we want as a preview is to, with this, is to get your feedback and also to do a dry run so that we don't make, well, we'll probably, as you know, how when you do new technology, when you do anything new, you stand the risk of having some technical things go wrong. So thanks for being there for us and helping us out. What I'd like to do in the broadcast is to begin with a prayer, and this is sort of a prayer that I made up, so bear with me. May God make this new technology go well. May He provide us with inspiration to all who work with His children. Give us wisdom and strength to impact His children in a positive way. Grant us strength to deal with adversity and wisdom to show others His way. Amen. Now, what I would like to do, that the purpose of this session is going to be to get your feedback and to give you an overview of what we are going to do on the 9th. Some of you I've talked with, and you already kind of understand what's going to happen going forward. But the purpose of this segment is to you can respond. Hold on one second. Marcus and I are having. Okay, Bob, thanks for. I see. Hi, Bob, you're here, and I appreciate your being here, and to all of you. I do want to let you know that as we know, the first session for Whole and Healthy Children, which was done with the groups, we're trying to establish and to reinforce the caring relationship and setting the foundation for that relationship to grow. We had a conference back in December, and some of you that are on this conference call or on this webinar attended. But the one thing that came through, at least to me, is that what we needed was more specific information on how to build relationships and to communicate with our children. So this webinar is an overview of some of those highlights and some of we're going to use what's called the 40 assets in order to develop some of the material that you will have and your mentors will have up on the website that will help you with sample books, questions to ask that are age appropriate, as well as activities. As we go through this, I also want to point out that there are opportunities for all of the schools to contribute. Cy Fair had sent, Susan Nickel, actually, who's also on this webinar, had sent a file that had sample activities that are really multi-age appropriate. And that is going to be housed on the website in a file that I'm not quite finished putting together because it's taking a while. But what it has is it has the what we call the 40 assets that we're going to talk about a bit today, and we'll talk a lot more about it next week. And in addition to that, we'll have, as I said, questions and activities and books that correspond. So that's sort of an overview of what we're going to cover, those questions, those activities, some of the highlights of communicating, which include reinforcing the whole active listening concept, which is the highlight, I guess, of any kind of good mentor-mentee relationship. So those things will be up on the website. I will let you know when it goes up. I'll send out an email to the mentors. It will be up before or the day after the February 9th section, so that your mentees can go there and pull any activities down that they may they choose to use. Also, we'll have a number of references that they can go to that may also help them. So those are the 2 points I wanted to make starting off, is that if you have any questions, please type them in on the field on the right column of your screen. That the mentor activities will be on the Mission Houston Whole and Healthy Children website. And the idea of this session is to deliver practical ideas so that the mentors can have tools to use with their mentees. So those are the purposes for the overall program. Now, I am not going to, as I said before, not going to go over every single thing we're covering next week. I'm going to give you the high-level overview, because I would also like you guys to participate next week. And if I give you the whole spiel this week, then you won't have anything to look forward to. So what we are going to talk about next week, and we probably will not take the full hour today, but I did want to get your feedback. We are going to begin by talking about what we call the developmental assets. I know that when I was at Gordon Elementary, I mentioned it in front of Karen and asked Mrs. Epps about it. And Susan Nickel is actually the first one that brought up the whole idea about why don't we look into using the developmental assets. Now, why would we want to do that if it's something that's being used by the public schools in addition to after-school programs? The one thing that the developmental assets have, and I'll give you an overview of all the school districts, that most of which the people that are on the line are associated with, that various school districts are using these developmental assets. Part of the advantage of using these assets is that they're split them. Characteristics of 6 to 9-year-olds, they have characteristics of 10 to 14-year-olds, and it's one of the few programs that I have run across that goes into all those things, probably the only program that's quite so thorough, that has all the characteristics that go into making a whole and healthy child. And so the purpose again of this is to give you a preview of all this, get your input, and also, as I said before, mention the resource material that's going to be up there for your mentees. So I like this quote. I actually thought it was very appropriate for the children that we deal with, that it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken adults. And some of us that are mentoring have been doing this for a short time, and some of us have been doing this for a longer time. And one of the things that I hope we do with this session is to give everybody something that they can use, whether they've been mentoring for a short time or a long period of time. One of the things that as coordinators I would like to ask you to do is to encourage all your mentors to sign up for the webinar. And here's the reason why. Even if they can't make the webinar, what will happen is we're recording this file now. And the day after, if they didn't make it, we have the ability to track it and to actually send them the file. In addition to that, this webinar file, because we are recording it right now, and we'll record the one on the 9th. And then they have the ability to go to it and pull it off and look at it later. Or if you prefer, you can ask your mentors to join you at a common location. For example, Krista at Faith Bridge, they have a big room that has a TV hookup that you just really hook the computer into, and you have live access. So depending on the situation, you can have 2 or 3 people sitting around the computer, or how really this is to give you the flexibility to do it this session any way that you like, and to add to it if you so choose, or just have them use it as is. So that's why we're encouraging you to have all of your mentors sign up. We have the ability to put up to 100 people on this webinar. That's part of the reason why it's muted, because you can imagine the feedback. It would be very difficult to conduct a webinar when you had 100 people participating. But right now we have 31 people that have signed up for the session next week. I would strongly encourage you to send out an email if you haven't done already to get them to sign up. If you choose to do that, that would be very helpful. It would probably make life a lot easier for you too, because then you have the flexibility of doing it together or doing it separately. Now, moving on to our next slide. There's a slight delay on these things. Okay. So some of the questions that have come up for us, that came up at that session that Mark and Karen and Krista, Susan was there but in another room, but what the question was, what do our mentors need next? And they all said, all the coordinators, we need practical things. We need questions to ask and things to do to build relationships with the children, and they need to be age appropriate. And it was also suggested that we split the activities and the questions out based upon the age. So that's what we did. And I will tell you that after having done a lot of research on, okay, let's find the appropriate questions for our small people, which are six-year-olds through 9-year-olds, there's not that much out there. But the one place that had a good bit was the Search Institute, which is a known entity to almost all the school districts, and it is probably one of the most comprehensive organizations in the country. They have a huge body of research that goes into what makes for a whole child. And one of the things that we're beginning to see, which is is that we want to follow the children from the, if we start with them when they're in first grade, and we would like to be able to follow them as they get older. Okay, well, the things that you're doing with somebody when they're 6 years old are not going to be the things that you're doing with them when they're 11 or 12. So that's why these things are broken out. Now, so what is the role then as a mentor? Well, one of the things that we know, and I have 2 small people that I'm mentoring myself, is that you are likely to find yourself in situations where you are uncertain of what to do. And in general, there are some basic guidelines that we all need to, I guess, think about or abide by. So that with that, okay. So with that, we're going to talk about what framework can we use or should we use in order to provide support to children in all the various areas of development, but particularly in those areas that overlap in the spiritual way. And next week on February the 9th, Pat Rosenberg, who is the contact for the Search Institute, and she's very involved in the a number of the public schools. She also has a young man that's in high school now that she's been mentoring for some time. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Search Institute, but she's going to really go into it a bit more next week, and she knows a lot more about it. The Search Institute is an independent, nonprofit, non-sectarian organization. Their mission is to promote healthy children and communities, and they have come up with a framework that's called the developmental assets. Now, what does that mean? There are 40 common sense qualities that they've come up with that young people need to be successful. These assets, if you will, have been adopted by most of a lot of the school districts, most of the school districts where Whole and Healthy Children are located. But it is the most widely used framework that's used around the state and probably around the country. And the interesting thing about the 40 assets is that based on a decade of research and thousands of young people, on the average, students report having 19 of the 40 assets. So what's an asset? An asset is, we would maybe call it a nutrient. And a nutrient being those things that make for strong mind and character. So the assets then build good stuff in children and resist bad stuff. The research indicates that the more assets children have of these assets, the more likely they are to be leaders, to succeed in school, and to maintain good health. For our high-risk children, the less, and this is for both actually high risk and quote low risk, the less assets that children have, the more likely they are to engage in risky behavior such as alcohol, drugs, skipping school, or fighting. Now, my first reaction to this is there's no way that people are going to look at 40 things and say, oh, I'm going to remember all this. So we're just going to break it down into 2 main categories. I will also tell you that an extensive list of the assets are going to be a part of that material that's going to be up on the Mission Houston website. We actually could probably also send the file. I don't know if we can send it to all the webinar participants or not, but we may be able to. Marcus and I will have to work that part out. We haven't gotten to that yet. But on the external assets, and I'm just going over this at a high level, but I want to spend a little bit of time on, these are the big categories under external. There are 2 types, external assets and internal assets. And those 40 assets fall under either internal or external. And the big subgroupings under external are support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, constructive use of time. Now, that's the one that you probably will be the most interested in. Under constructive use of time is spiritual. And the 40 assets, the spiritual development is one of the things that is a big part of external assets. The research indicates that religious element, that is children that have at least 1 hour a week of some sort of religious training or experience, going to church, let's say that's what it is, Sunday school, after-school Bible study. Some of you I know are engaged in that. I know at McDougall they've got a program, and I think so does Karen. Has something. It's either at. I know there's something going on. It's at Shern and or Gordon, and so that's part where that falls out. There's even a link on the Search Institute's website to a religious Sunday school program using the 40 assets as a way to educate children in Sunday school about ways to be better, more well-rounded individuals, of which religion is a big part, or at least a piece of it. So then the other piece of the assets are the internal assets. Remember I said they were 2 categories. And I'll go into this more next time, but just broad brush: commitment to learning, positive values, social competencies, and I've heard most of the coordinators especially bring up social competencies. These are things that a lot of our children lack. The things like when I talk to somebody, I shake their hand. I look them in the eye. Modeling the behavior we would like to have them adopt. And then also, and this is a big piece to me that ties into the spiritual end of what we hope our children get through the mentoring program, is that young people that believe in their self-worth and feel that they have control over the things that happen to them. We know from research that one of the conditions of poverty is that the feeling of lack of control and, everything being outside of your reach. So those are the things we will focus in on, and when Pat is on the webinar next week, she will hit on those because she's the true expert in the whole assets. As a matter of fact, today I met her to give her headphones for next week, and I met her over by Lamar High School because she's on a team there. It's a district-wide team to try to make things better, if you will, in the public high schools within the Houston Independent School District. Now, some of you may be thinking, how do I know what school districts? And here you go. This is a list of school districts that are within the Houston area that are currently using the 40 assets. In one, some of them, the school districts have all embraced the 40 these ones that are mentioned. However, Karen and Steve and I heard from one of the principals that the school district said, we're embracing these, but the principal was somewhat chagrined because there had been no training offered to the teachers around this. It is the most widely used framework, if you will, within Texas, and possibly or probably within in the country. Pat wasn't too sure on that part, but she did definitely know in Texas. She actually is the rep for the whole state. So with that, that's why the 40 assets have been chosen as a framework, because there's a rhyme and a reason for some of the things that we're doing. But we still know, and I'm going to reinforce this, that the foundation, the beginning, the start of everything is always listening. And to reinforce that importance, how important listening is, and active listening for all our children, because one of the things that we know, or that happens, is that a lot of these children have no in a lot of homes, the parents do not have the time to spend and actually sit there and hear a child. And so that's why, particularly with our high-risk children, it's so important that they have at least one adult in their life that hears them, if you will. So what does that mean? When we actively listen, one of the things that it's important to note, no matter how old the child is, be prepared for an unexpected answer. And that answer may be outside your frame of reference. The answer may even bother you. I'll tell you one of my own little stories. I have a 4-year-old and I have a 6-year-old at Shern Elementary that I mentor. And after Christmas, the 4-year-old, and I speak some Spanish, certainly good enough to communicate with a 4-year-old, and he told me that a friend of his mother had given him a pistol for Christmas. And my response, as I imagine a lot of you would be, whoa, that is outside my frame of reference to give a 4-year-old a pistol. And so after I stood back from that, I said, okay. Well, what did your mother say about that? And he said she was mad. And I have no idea who the gentleman was. He really didn't want to talk about that part. So, but that certainly was outside my frame of reference. And even I had to take a gulp and just begin to ask more questions to see how he felt about it, how his mother felt about it, and then and even though that lack of judgment was somewhat shocking, I had to pull myself back and try to figure out what's the next question to ask to make sure that I was understanding, first of all, what he said and the reason for it, and why this gentleman gave him the pistol. But I will tell you, it took some restraint on my part because it was somewhat shocking and horrifying when I first heard it. So if the answer then, and I'm sure you all have stories, and I'm sure your mentors all have stories of things that have come up where you maybe get an answer that's out of the blue and it doesn't reflect the values that you hope for, and to restrain yourself and simply to listen, even though the value that's reflected in that may be somewhat disappointing to you. So that's my most, I guess, recent tale and of course this was a 4-year-old, which was even more kind of disturbing to me, but it kind of gave me an idea of what this child was dealing with, and what he didn't react. It was more of, he wasn't really judging the pistol, but he said his mother was upset and angry about it. So that gave me some feedback on his mother and the environment. So if the child of your mentee, and those, and of course, all my coordinators, or all our coordinators, they may hear these kinds of things where the mentor comes to you and say, how do I deal with this? And then, you know, if you're really actively listening, what you do then is you ask more questions about what the young person thinks and feels, and how they, you know, how they feel about that. And that to always remember that cultural differences are important to understand, and that not judging, even though it'd be really easy to do, is part of what we need to do as mentors. So when you hear something that's somewhat shocking, this is not for the coordinators, by the way, so much as it is for the mentors next week. Give yourself time to think of an appropriate answer. And one of the things that I think is a good thing to do is that you pause, you give yourself a chance to think, and then if you still need more time, then paraphrase to give you more time to digest the answer. And then that way you're clear is that what you heard is what they meant. Because as we all know, we all come to the table with barriers and filters. I see here Susan entered in a question, it's more of a statement that it's a question that is Sci-Fair using the answer, and I think they are. I don't know why that's not on there. But, as a matter of fact, Sci-Fair is always one of the benchmarks, school districts. But we will find out. We will find that out. As a matter of fact, when Pat is on, she will definitely know. So let's talk, and I'm just going to go briefly over these developmental norms for what we'll go over in more detail with the mentors next time. The developmental norms are, and again, this is from the Search Institute, how do we respond and build relationships, and it's all based on norms. I'm certainly not going to read a Pat the Bunny book to a 12-year-old. So what I think makes sense, and again, this will also be up on in the resource material, is what are some of the things you can expect for children of a certain age. And the things that we care about, there are 5 different areas, and that's all up on the website, but the 3, it seems to me, that we focus on that affect our mentees from the way we deal with them are the intellectual, the emotional, and the spiritual end. And next week we will talk more about it, but I will mention that from a spiritual end, that at this age, when they're 6 to 9, this is when children begin to wonder more about the world around them, and they begin to ask why things happen. And they also begin to notice that their friends may have different spiritual practices than they do, or their friends may have spiritual practices and they don't. They may, but they also tend to ask cause and effect questions like, what happens after Grandpa dies? I'm mentioning these things because these are opportunities for mentors to bring up, well, I believe in, or what happens if someone breaks a window? Well, I believe that. And so those are opportunities, I think, that our mentors can focus on to delve at least the spiritual, the religious end of what it means when you're 6 to 9 years old. Then for 10 to 14-year-olds, and that's how we've kind of split everything up because most of the information is split that way. The main things I want to mention to the coordinators is that at this age, children begin to see contradictions in the world in religious and spiritual beliefs. Many will confront and question these contradictions. And some question or reject their childhood beliefs as they move beyond black and white thinking. During this period of time, those of you that are familiar with Piaget's developmental pyramid, during this age of abstraction, which tends to be closer to children being 12, 13, in that age group, then they're more likely to kind of really see and understand that there are different ideas and different beliefs. So you would be dealing with those children probably in a different way, and than you would when the children are a lot younger. Most of you are probably already aware that many religious traditions have intensive religious training during these years to help kids sort through their beliefs, because these tend to be the times when the peer group becomes very, very important, and socializing is really important, and they begin to make choices about their friends and how that plays out in their spiritual life and their ethical life. So things change. So, and again, all the backup for this will be on the internet. Now, moving on, I'm going to briefly go through this for you because it did not make much sense to put every single question, book, and activity up here in the webinar, but we wanted people to be able to resource it later. With the Search Institute, there is if you go to the actual website for anybody that has an interest in this, it's searchinstitute.com. And there actually is, and it takes a couple of gyrations to get to it, but it's the Institute of Spirituality, and it talks about the 40 assets and how the spiritual end of things fits in. And just today, when I met Pat Rosenberg, she actually had this book that I'm going to look at and get some things. It had some great additional questions that we really ought to put up on the internet for you. I know Mark had some great questions that he had come up with, I think, through some of the Sci-Fair training and a trip that he made that were questions that kind of got to the core of what a child is dealing with. And there's a book, and it's not in this webinar, I'll get, because I just got it today, but it's called Mentoring for Meaningful Results. And it's a great book. It has a lot of questions in it, and it looked like it was multi-age appropriate. And we will also add that information on. But I'm mentioning the Institute of Spirituality. That may be something you'd have an interest in. And as well as this book it's called Mentoring for Meaningful Results. We also, in the PowerPoint, in this webinar, there's some additional information that other books that you can source. Now, one of the things that I found in the process of trying to find activities and questions for our younger folks, the kindergarten through third graders, is there's not that much out there that, or there really isn't, for smaller children. I will say, though, that this particular book, which I ordered, is a really good book. And what I've done is, with permission from Search Institute, I've done some of the activities, taken some of the activities that are here and put them up on this website. I also sent some of the activities to, I know I sent it to Mark and then to Bob Livingston, because we were having this kind of a conversation. But this is the book, Building Character from the Start, 201 Activities to Foster Creativity, Literacy, and Play. They also actually have this book at Barnes & Noble. So I'm mentioning that, or it can be ordered through the Search Institute. It's a really, really good book. And if you're dealing with little ones, it's a really good idea to take a look at it, even if you just make a trip up to Barnes & Noble and take a look. But also I'll have pieces of it up there on our resource guide. So, demonstration of the sample questions. um, for small children, younger children, frequently the children are not used to having adults focus all their attention on the child. So in this particular book, which I happen to think is a good idea, there are a lot of coloring activities. It's a finish the picture question that can be asked as the mentee draws. And so really it's like a coloring book pages that are that'll be up on the website, and that are also in the book if you so choose to buy the whole book. So I think that's a very helpful way to deal with the children. And as they're drawing, then there are also follow-up questions on there that you can ask as they're drawing, or you can draw with them. They can color, or you can just give them the question that's on the page. So that's a good, I think, recommendation for children that are K through 3. And when you go on it's things like who takes care of you when your parents are not around. Draw a picture of this person, and then there are follow-up questions. How do you feel? How do you like? What do you like about this person? Does this person take care of you? What are some of the things that you like, etc. So that's sort of the format for the K through 3 for sample questions. Now for are these the young ones? Okay. So excuse me one. I can't see that. Excuse me one second. Sorry about this. I'm trying to see the rest of the page. Okay. So they have on this page that you're looking at now, page 22. It says sample questions, and I pull this off of some of the picture drawing things. Draw a picture of someone who takes care of you when your family is not around. Do you know a grown-up you really like? Draw a picture of this grown-up and write the things you like about them. Draw a picture about a time when someone told a lie. Pretend you're a grown-up. Draw or write about something special you hope to do. So those are some sample drawing activities that you'll see up on the 6 through 9-year-old. Now, the second piece that I wanted you to see are in this same book, and there are other books and activities, but this one really captured a lot all in one place. And this particular book is When Sophie Gets Angry, Really, Really Angry. And I'll give you a number of books, but what you can do then is any book that's there, you read the book, which a lot of these are going to be in the school library, and then some of the questions that you can follow up. What do you do when you're really, really mad? What are some good ways to make yourself less angry? Is it okay for you to run off by yourself, which is what happens in the book, without telling your parents or teachers where you're going? So that's one sample from that. Then there's also an activity that I'm showing you that we will show the mentors on the 9th from that whole series, and it's called Human Bingo, and I kind of adjusted it a bit so that you can do it for one child or two child or just children or you and another person. So that's a sample activity for that age group. Now moving on, then there's another really great book if you're dealing with children that are ages 10 to 14, and it's called Conversations on the Go. I will have some of those conversations scripts, if you will, up there on that resource material. It is particularly helpful with various questions that you can ask children that are a little bit older. I personally didn't think they were very age appropriate for children that were too small because they just wouldn't really get it. So some of the sample questions that have come from that book. Who are those people in your life you can really count on? Why did you choose them? Do you have friends who are going through tough times or whose families are not supportive? What do you and your friends do to support them? What are 3 creative ways to say no to your friends when you're asked to do something wrong? So these are sample questions that are from that Conversations on the Go, which is also part of they all play into the 40 assets. Then you also will see sample books, and I've got a picture of one. These are ones that I pulled for different questions for 10 to 14-year-olds. The titles tend to say, conversation starters to get teenagers talking. But most of the things that I saw, you can do them with children that are a little bit younger. So there are a number of books that are up there on the website. They're not very expensive, but you can get them in the bookstore, or you can order them through Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And one of the mentors, as a matter of fact, and Cy Fair, and I don't remember her name now, but she was the one that brought up the very first book. Mark, you probably remember this. It was, I think, 401 activity or questions to ask teenagers. And I got that one, and a lot of these books are from the same author. And these authors tend to be people that are youth ministers, and they've taken their ministry a step further and come up with these little books on conversation starters for children that are a little bit older. And another resource, which this book came from the Search Institute, and it's called Activities on the Go, and it's the companion book to Conversations on the Go. And what it has in here are sample activities that your mentors can do with their mentees. And if you which is the next page, here's some sample activities or ideas from here. Swap music recommendations with the child. Listen together if you can. Tell others what you like. Share journal entries. Make a dream board. These are some kinds of ideas that also came from the sample activities. These things we'll give you samples of those on the website. The first book name that I gave you was, and I'll have this updated for the slideshow on the 9th, Mentoring for Meaningful Results. The author is Christy Proust. It's P-R-O-B as in boy, S-T. And it looks to be a really great book. So that may be one you would like to look into. P-R-O-B-S-T. So that may be one that you're interested in. We're trying to spell that for folks. Now, I am, by the way, this file will get emailed to you, everybody that participated in this training today. Here are some sample books that we talked about today, some of which we've talked about, some of which are ones that I'm also recommending. Oh, I did have it on here. I didn't realize that. Mentoring for Meaningful Results, Asset Building and Activities for Youth and Adults. And that's also a very good one. And all of these are available on the website. Now, I actually talked longer than I had intended to do, but with that, I wanted to give you an overview of what we will cover next week, and also to encourage you to have all your mentors sign up, whether they can make it or not, just so we can get them the file, and it'll go to them directly then. And with that, we've talked about, we've given an overview of what we're going to cover. I also wanted to let you know that Pat Rosenberg, which really works better so you don't have to hear just me talk, that she will be doing kind of a back and forth and asking and answering questions. So she will also be the other participant. The activities will be up on the website. I will send an email as soon as that is up there so that you will have an idea of that. Yay, go ahead and look. And we will cover the developmental assets next week, characteristics of 6 through 9s, as well as 10 through 14s. We'll give an overview of questions and books and activities that your mentors can use, and then we'll have samples of those up on the website. All they have to do is go there and pull it. Let me also mention one other thing before we adjourn. The Sci-Fair had, as I mentioned, Susan Nickel had sent me a file that had a lot of different activities that they compiled for their mentors to use. And that is also up as part of that resource file, because a lot of those things are multi-age appropriate. If you, any of the coordinators have things that they'd like to share, I would love to incorporate it in that resource material. It's a great way for you to share your great ideas and your mentors' great ideas with some of the other schools and other communities that are looking to make our children whole and healthy. And with that, I'd like to end this webinar. We'd love your feedback, and I'd like to end with just a short prayer. Dear Lord, I hope that going forward that our mentors find benefit and use for the resources that we are trying to give them and to share with them, and that they in turn will share their love and spirit with all the children in the communities in which they minister. And God bless you all, and thank you so much for being here. Good night.